When an empath ceases to forgive, a profound revelation unfolds, as Carl Jung so insightfully recognized. Every mask in their life begins to crumble. This isn't merely about others shedding their disguises. It's a monumental unmasking of the self. Suddenly, those who once appeared loving reveal the threads of manipulation woven into their affection. Relationships presumed kind expose the undercurrents of exploitation that sustained them. And perhaps the most staggering discovery of all is the empath's own realization. They have been wearing the heaviest mask, the mask of ceaseless forgiveness, a silent, corrosive force slowly eroding their very soul. Imagine this pivotal moment. You've extended forgiveness yet again to the one who shattered your trust, who mistook your boundless kindness for an endless well of weakness, who treated your empathy as if it were a limitless resource, freely available for their consumption. You offered a gentle smile, uttered the familiar, "It's okay," and absorbed their burden of guilt, allowing them to drift into peaceful slumber. Meanwhile, you lay awake, the quiet hours echoing with questions about your own inherent worth. But this time, a tremor of change runs through you. Instead of the usual, fleeting relief that accompanies the maintenance of a fragile peace, a different sensation stirs. A powerful, primal rage. Not the explosive, destructive kind, but a quiet, sacred fury. The righteous indignation of a soul that has, finally, reached its absolute limit. Jung termed this the collision with the shadow, the raw, unavoidable moment when everything you've meticulously suppressed bursts into the conscious light. For the empath, this collision is nothing short of revolutionary. It redefines their entire existence. Yet, here lies a truth Jung uncovered that remains largely unspoken. An empath's endless forgiveness isn't always genuine compassion. Often, it is what we call survival forgiveness. It's a deeply ingrained trauma response, cleverly camouflaged as a virtue. Jung observed this recurring pattern throughout his extensive practice, understanding that it stemmed from a profound, unconscious need to belong. To avoid conflict at all costs, he penned, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." The empath, in this context, forgives not from a place of unshakable strength, but from a profound terror of abandonment, of confronting discord, of being perceived as bad or unlovable. They learned early in life that their very worth was intricately tied to their capacity to absorb pain and discomfort without a single complaint, much like a sponge endlessly soaking up spills. Jung aptly called this the sacrifice of the authentic self for social acceptance, a tragic exchange of inner truth for external validation. Yet, when the empath bravely chooses to stop this endless cycle of forgiveness, something truly revolutionary takes hold. The entire social ecosystem that has been meticulously constructed around their self-sacrifice begins to shudder, then to collapse. And it is in this collapse that the masks truly begin to fall, first from others, then, most powerfully, from within themselves. Jung's most radical insight centered on what he called the shadow, the parts of ourselves we reject, deny, and subsequently project onto others. For empaths, this shadow holds a surprising, often terrifying treasure, their own innate capacity for healthy selfishness, for righteous anger, and for establishing sacred, non-negotiable boundaries. Jung's wisdom echoes. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. For the empath, this darkness isn't evil. It is the vibrant, powerful essence of their suppressed self-preservation instincts. It is the part of them that instinctively knows when they are being exploited, but has been diligently silenced by an overwhelming, lifelong need to be good, to be loved, to keep the peace. When empaths cease to forgive out of habit, they are not becoming cruel. They are integrating their shadow, reclaiming the vital parts of themselves they abandoned. in a desperate attempt to maintain relationships that were, tragically, never truly mutual. Jung identified specific, observable patterns that emerge when highly sensitive individuals reclaim their psychological boundaries, what we term the 8 signs of sacred rebellion. If you recognize these shifts within yourself, you are experiencing what Jung called the birth of authentic selfhood, a magnificent unfolding of your truest essence. Sign 1. The energy stops leaking. This is the energy reversal. Instead of automatically absorbing everyone's emotional debris like a porous filter, you begin to pause and question, is this truly mine to carry? Jung observed that true individuation always commences with this fundamental demarcation between self and other. You become acutely aware of the profound exhaustion that follows certain interactions, recognizing the stark difference between genuine remorse and manipulative guilt-tripping. Most crucially, you relinquish the crushing burden of feeling responsible for regulating other people's emotional states. Jung eloquently wrote, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens." The awakened empath finally turns their gaze inward, seeing their own depleted state, much like a parched garden yearning for water. When you learn to trust your intuition completely, the inner compass, once ignored, now guides you with unwavering certainty, saying, "I no longer doubt what I see and feel." What's truly remarkable is how others sense this profound, energetic shift even before you consciously articulate it. The emotional vampires, finding their usual nourishment cut off, instinctively begin to avoid your radiant presence. Sign 2. The performance ends. Jung called this the death of the persona, the carefully constructed social mask we wear for acceptance. For empaths, this persona is the perpetually understanding, endlessly accommodating figure. But when they stop forgiving out of automatic reflex, this mask becomes utterly impossible to sustain. You cease saying, "It's fine," when every fiber of your being screams that it is not. You stop crafting elaborate excuses for egregious behavior. You stop performing emotional availability for individuals who have never offered you the same in return. This is the glorious end of emotional labor without reciprocity. Jung cautioned that dropping the persona would feel terrifying, like stepping off a cliff. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Yet, becoming authentic inevitably means disappointing those who grew comfortable with, and even preferred, your performance. But the freedom gained is priceless. Sign 3. The manipulation becomes visible. Here, Jung's profound understanding of projection becomes absolutely critical. When empaths cease their automatic forgiveness, they withdraw their participation from what we call the empathy exploitation cycle. Suddenly, the manipulation tactics they were once utterly blind to are illuminated with piercing clarity. You recognize love bombing for what it is, excessive praise meticulously designed to extract further forgiveness or compliance. You spot guilt trips, cleverly disguised as vulnerable appeals. You see, with startling clarity, how your deepest compassion was cruelly weaponized against your own sacred boundaries. Jung wrote, "Everything unconscious is projected." The awakening empath stops projecting their own inherent integrity and noble intentions onto others. They begin to see people as they genuinely are, not as they desperately hoped they could be, or as they once needed them to be. Sign 4. The guilt loses its power. Jung observed that guilt is often internalized shame, cleverly instilled by others who directly benefit from our compliance and self-abandonment. When empaths stop forgiving reflexively, they experience what we term guilt immunity. They recognize guilt as a pervasive control mechanism, a subtle but potent chain. You stop feeling guilty for possessing standards, for demanding respect. You stop apologizing for the very existence of your boundaries, which are essential for your well-being. You recognize, with empowering clarity, that individuals who attempt to guilt you back into your old patterns of forgiveness are, in essence, revealing their vested interest in your continued self-abandonment. Jung called this the integration of healthy selfishness. It is not cruelty, it is the vital, life-affirming instinct of self-preservation finally coming online, like a dormant, protective system springing to life. Sign 5. The relationships sort themselves. Jung believed that authentic inner transformation invariably ripples outwards, profoundly altering our relationships. When empaths stop offering unconditional forgiveness to everyone, the great sorting commences. Relationships built upon exploitation, imbalance, or a parasitic dynamic begin to wither and dissolve like plants deprived of light. Conversely, authentic connections, rooted in mutual respect and genuine care, deepen and flourish. Some individuals will indeed disappear from your life when you cease to be their emotional dumping ground, much like fair-weather friends vanish when the storm hits. Others will vehemently attempt to guilt you back into your old, compliant role. But a precious few will honor and respect your newly established boundaries, rising to meet you in a space of genuine reciprocity. Jung beautifully articulated, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But this profound transformation can only occur when both individuals show up authentically, without masks, without pretense. Indeed, people will sense this shift. They will begin treating you differently when you finally find your backbone, perceiving the change before you even utter a word. Sign 6. The anger becomes sacred. Jung profoundly understood that anger, often demonized, is frequently suppressed wisdom. When empaths stop forgiving, they access what we call sacred rage. This isn't the destructive, uncontrolled fury that harms. It is a potent, protective force that declares, unequivocally, no more. You feel a searing anger about past violations you once minimized, rationalized, or excused. You are furious about the vital boundaries you never dared to set. This anger isn't toxic. It is pure, unadulterated information. It is your psyche, your deepest self, screaming precisely where you abandoned yourself, where you allowed your spirit to be diminished. Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. The pain of truly seeing how you have been treated, how you have allowed yourself to be treated, becomes the transformative fire that forges your new, unyielding boundaries, like steel refined in a crucible." Sign 7. The pattern recognition activates. Jung's extensive work on psychological types illuminated that empaths often possess highly developed intuitive abilities. When they stop forgiving automatically, what we call pattern recognition goes into exhilarating overdrive. You begin to see the same manipulation tactics, the same insidious games, played out across different people and various situations, like a recurring script. You recognize the insidious cycle: transgression, followed by superficial remorse, then a flurry of love bombing, only to repeat the pattern. You learn to spot emotional predators, those who seek to exploit your kindness, long before they fully reveal their true, predatory selves. This isn't paranoia. It is highly developed, finely tuned discernment, a superpower you've always possessed but kept dormant. Jung called this differentiated consciousness, the ability to see clearly, without the obscuring emotional fog of projection or wishful thinking. Sign 8. The self emerges. The culminating sign is what Jung called encounter with the self, not the ego or the persona, but the integrated, radiant totality of who you truly are. When empaths stop forgiving reflexively, their authentic self, long buried, begins to gloriously emerge. Like a magnificent phoenix rising from ashes, you discover preferences, desires, and passions you never even knew you possessed, simply because you were perpetually accommodating the preferences of everyone else. You find your voice, strong and clear, after years of self-imposed silence. You realize, with profound relief, that you have legitimate needs, heartfelt desires, and non-negotiable boundaries that are just as valid, just as important as anyone else's. If you recognize yourself in these transformative patterns, embrace this truth. My breaking point became my breakthrough. Jung's timeless wisdom rings true. The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. The empath who stops forgiving finally claims this sacred privilege, not as a luxury, but as an inherent right. Yet, Jung never romanticized this arduous process. He candidly referred to it as the dark night of the soul, a necessary, often painful period where old patterns must die before new, vibrant ones can be born. For empaths, this phase can feel like a profound social death, because so much of their identity, their sense of self-worth, was inextricably built upon being the forgiving one. You might indeed lose friends who valued only your compliance, your unwavering availability. Family members, unsettled by your transformation, might accuse you of changing, of becoming different. You might grapple with waves of guilt for finally setting boundaries that, in hindsight, should have been firmly established years ago. Jung offered a poignant warning. No tree, it is said, can grow to heaven unless its roots reach down to hell. The empath must courageously descend into their own psychological underworld, confronting all the suppressed rage, the buried pain, the echoes of past betrayals they have valiantly held at bay before they can truly ascend into the radiant light of authentic selfhood. When empaths cease their automatic forgiveness, something truly remarkable begins to happen to the people in their orbit. What we call the great unmasking begins. Others can no longer comfortably hide behind the empath's endless understanding, like actors whose stage lights have suddenly been cut. The narcissist can no longer deftly utilize your empathy to evade accountability. The manipulator finds their tactics rendered powerless, unable to twist your compassion into compliant submission. The emotional vampire, suddenly starved of their usual sustenance, can no longer feed on your boundless forgiveness. Your newfound clarity, your unwavering presence, forces them to reveal their true, unvarnished nature. Jung keenly understood this dynamic. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But he also knew that sometimes people aren't irritated by their own reflection. They are profoundly irritated by your courageous refusal to carry their shadow, their burdens, for them any longer. But the most astonishing revelation occurs when the empath's own mask finally falls. They realize, with a jolt of recognition, that their endless forgiveness was, in its own paradoxical way, a form of manipulation, a subconscious strategy to maintain relationships through self-sacrifice rather than through genuine, authentic connection. Jung called this the recognition of one's own shadow. The empath must bravely face the uncomfortable truth that their forgiveness was often driven by deeply embedded fears, not by pure, unconditional love. Fear of abandonment, fear of conflict, fear of being perceived as bad or unlovable. This profound recognition is not shameful. It is utterly liberating. It signifies that you can finally love from a place of wholeness, from an overflowing cup, rather than from a place of chronic woundedness. You can now give from conscious choice, rather than from a compulsive, ingrained need. Jung meticulously distinguished between unconscious and conscious psychological processes. When empaths halt their automatic forgiveness, they cultivate what we call conscious forgiveness. This is a forgiveness that genuinely serves the soul, not the ego. This profound forgiveness doesn't immediately follow a wrongdoing. It emerges after truth-telling, after firm boundaries have been established, after natural consequences have been justly felt. It is a forgiveness that bravely includes justice, not one that bypasses or negates it. Jung wrote, "Forgiveness is not the suppression of a justifiable reaction. True forgiveness honors the wound, acknowledging its existence and its impact, while simultaneously releasing the grudge. It sees clearly, without rose-tinted glasses, while consciously choosing not to be consumed by the corrosive venom of resentment. Jung understood that psychological energy adheres to certain laws, much like physical energy. When empaths cease leaking their vital energy through automatic forgiveness, that energy becomes miraculously available for what we call creative self-expression. They finally possess the precious resources for their own dreams, their own goals, their own profound healing. You begin creating, instead of merely consuming the dramas of others. You start pursuing long-abandoned interests, hobbies, and passions, no longer tethered to being constantly available for everyone else's crises. You wisely invest in relationships that genuinely energize you, rather than relentlessly drain you. This isn't selfishness. Jung called it individuation, the natural, sacred development of a complete, whole human being who can contribute to the world from a place of inner fullness rather than chronic emptiness. Jung firmly believed that individual transformation inevitably ignites collective change. When empaths stop forgiving automatically, they bravely model a profoundly different way of being for everyone around them. What we call the authenticity virus begins to spread, a benevolent contagion of truth. Your courage to set clear boundaries gives others tacit permission to set their own. Your refusal to enable dysfunction courageously exposes the very systems that depend on empathic compliance. Your authentic self-expression serves as a powerful reminder to others that they do not have to perform, do not have to diminish themselves to be truly loved. This is precisely why your transformation feels so profoundly threatening to some people. You're not just changing yourself, you're bravely changing the fundamental rules of engagement for everyone in your orbit, dismantling old paradigms. Jung's concept of individuation encompasses the ability to form what he termed conscious relationships, connections forged between two whole, self-actualized individuals, rather than two wounded halves desperately seeking completion in each other. When empaths stop automatic forgiveness, they become genuinely available for this elevated level of connection. You begin to attract individuals who can meet your authenticity with their own, forging bonds based on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine understanding, rather than on mutual wounding or unspoken needs. You learn to love from an overflow of inner richness, rather than from a place of desperate lack. These conscious relationships rarely require constant forgiveness, because they are built upon honesty, transparency, and clear communication from their very inception. Conflicts are addressed promptly and openly, rather than being suppressed until they inevitably explode into destructive force. Jung's individuation process involves integrating all aspects of the psyche, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, conscious and unconscious. For empaths, this means integrating their profound capacity for both deep compassion and discerning wisdom. You learn to feel deeply, to connect profoundly, without absorbing everything, without becoming overwhelmed. You develop the invaluable ability to see others' pain and struggles without automatically making them your responsibility to fix or carry. You become what we call compassionately detached, caring deeply, but without carrying the burden. Much like a lighthouse illuminates the path without needing to pull the ships to shore. This integration creates what Jung called psychological wholeness, the magnificent ability to respond to life from your full range of human capacities, rather than being confined to your wounded empathic patterns. Jung understood that psychological development always possesses a profound spiritual dimension. When empaths stop forgiving automatically, they often experience what we call sacred disillusionment, the painful but utterly necessary death of spiritual bypassing. You realize, with sobering clarity, that endless, indiscriminate forgiveness was not spiritual evolution. It was, in fact, spiritual stagnation. True spiritual growth demands facing your own shadow, establishing firm boundaries, and honoring your own divine nature just as fiercely as you honor the divine nature in others. Jung wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This grand privilege includes becoming someone who forgives consciously, loves authentically, and serves the world from a place of profound inner wholeness. Jung was among the first to recognize the intricate connection between psychological and physical health. When empaths stop absorbing everyone's turbulent emotions, their bodies often begin a miraculous healing process from what we call energetic toxicity. Chronic fatigue starts to lift when you cease processing everyone's emotional waste. Anxiety diminishes significantly when you are no longer hypervigilant about others' moods, constantly scanning the emotional landscape. Autoimmune issues frequently improve when you stop, in essence, attacking your own vital boundaries. Your nervous system finally gets the much-needed rest it craves when it's not constantly activated by others' dysregulation. This is the body's natural, intelligent response to the establishment of healthy psychological boundaries. Jung observed that individuation ultimately leads to what he called the development of wisdom. Empaths, who have learned conscious forgiveness, often blossom into what we call wounded healers. Individuals who can empaths genuinely help others without losing themselves in the rest process. You can now recognize empathic wounding in others without being triggered or overwhelmed by it. You can offer profound guidance and support without feeling responsible for the outcomes. You become a radiant lighthouse, providing illumination and direction without chasing after every ship lost in the dark. This hard-won wisdom isn't cold or detached. It is warm but beautifully boundaried, caring deeply but not carrying the weight, loving fiercely but never losing yourself in the process. Jung believed that individual healing contributes profoundly to collective healing. When empaths learn conscious forgiveness, they bravely break generational patterns of empathic exploitation. What we call the cycle breaker effect begins to ripple outwards. You model healthy relationships for your children, demonstrating what true respect looks like. You courageously refuse to participate in dysfunctional family dynamics, drawing a line in the sand. You show others, through your very existence, that empathy does not and should not require self-erasure. You become living, breathing proof that sensitive people can be both exquisitely soft and incredibly strong. This powerful legacy extends far beyond your immediate circle. Every boundary you set gives someone else unspoken permission to set theirs. Every time you choose conscious forgiveness over automatic forgiveness, you contribute a vital thread to the tapestry of collective healing. Jung cherished psychological paradoxes because they often unveiled deeper, more profound truths. The beautiful paradox of the empath's journey is this: when you stop forgiving everyone else, you finally learn to forgive yourself. When you stop absorbing everyone else's guilt, you release your own deeply embedded shame. You forgive yourself for staying too long in toxic situations, for clinging to crumbling foundations. You forgive yourself for betraying your own sacred boundaries, for silencing your inner voice. You forgive yourself for tragically mistaking trauma bonds for genuine love. This self-forgiveness is, without doubt, the deepest, most potent healing of all. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." The empath who stops forgiving others finally becomes capable of forgiving themselves, not for being human, but for momentarily forgetting their own immense, divine worth. So, here is the paramount truth I want you to internalize. Your forgiveness is sacred. It is not meant to be carelessly given away like candy to anyone who demands it. It is meant to be offered consciously, discerningly, when your soul is truly ready, when justice has been served, when truth has been honored. Jung dedicated his life to studying the profound process of becoming whole, and he discovered that it invariably requires saying a resolute no to what diminishes you, so that you can say a resounding yes to what honors and elevates you. If you recognize yourself in these 8 transformative signs, you are already walking the powerful path Jung so meticulously mapped out. Trust the process, even when it's uncomfortable. Trust your anger. It holds vital information. Trust your boundaries. They are your protective shield. Trust that becoming who you truly are is not selfish. It is absolutely necessary, not just for your well-being, but for the world's. Your courageous refusal to forgive automatically doesn't make you hard. It makes you real. And the world, now more than ever, desperately needs more real empaths. People who love from a place of inner fullness, serve from conscious choice, and forgive from a wellspring of profound wisdom. When an empath stops forgiving, every mask falls away. The masks others wore to manipulate your kindness, to exploit your gentle nature. The masks you wore to avoid their anger, to keep a false peace. And in that sacred stripping away, something breathtakingly beautiful emerges. Your authentic, radiant self. You discover, with liberating clarity, that you don't need to be perfect to be loved. You don't need to be endlessly understanding to be profoundly valuable. You don't need to carry everyone's pain to prove your inherent worth. Jung's greatest gift to empaths is this profound understanding. Individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, is not just your right, it is your sacred responsibility, not only to yourself but to a world that yearns for conscious empaths, for boundaried healers, and for people who love from wholeness rather than from chronic woundedness. Your journey from automatic forgiveness to conscious choice is not merely personal healing, it is truly revolutionary. And Jung, with his profound understanding of the human soul, would undoubtedly be incredibly proud.